I'd like to share a story with you today. A little over 15 years ago, I was a professor and I ran a large research lab that studied heart failure. The goal of our lab was to understand the processes underlying heart failure and to try to develop interventions to treat that devastating disease. One day, I had a young student who came to me with an idea for an experiment. And as she described that experiment, I thought to myself, that's the worst idea I ever heard. She persisted with the explanation, and she was trying to convince me to conduct this experiment. And I suppose that in a moment of weakness, I said, okay, go ahead and do the experiment. The experiment was going to take 4 months, and I kind of forgot about it because it was the worst idea I ever heard. And 4 months later, she and her colleagues came to me with the results of that experiment. You can probably guess where this is going. When they showed me the results, I almost fell out of my chair. The results of that experiment revealed a potential cost-effective intervention for the treatment of heart failure. I was ecstatic. I was ecstatic for that student, I was ecstatic for the lab, and frankly, I was really ecstatic for myself. It changed the way we approached our research for the next 5 to 10 years. Some of my students applied for patents, and they published papers, and everything was great. But that's not the point of this story. I almost prevented her from conducting that experiment. I did some self-reflection and I tried to figure out why is that. I always challenge my students to challenge their closely held assumptions and to approach things with an open mind. In that case, my students did a much better job at that than I did. I was shaken by that and I was disappointed. I'm okay now. I got over it. Yeah, I think I'm okay now. But in any case, that story stuck with me to this day. So when I became a provost, I pledged to myself that I'll try to make sure I get out of the way and that the university stays out of the way to really promote an environment for innovation and creativity. And that environment exists at CU Boulder from top to bottom with senior leadership all the way down to our staff. And here's an example of what that looks like today. We have, I would argue, one of the most creative senior leadership groups in the country. That it exists in the form of our deans and our vice chancellors. And many of our deans are here today, so I'd like to ask you to stand up. So some of our deans are Jim Anaya of the law school. Steve Bruns is here today. Standing in for Rob Shea in music, Lori Bergen, College of Communication, Media of Information, Bobby Braun in engineering, Sarah Thompson, continuing education, Kathy Schultz in education, Ann Schmeezing from the graduate school, and Jim White from arts and sciences. So thank you. Now, this group of deans and vice chancellors are among the most innovative and collaborative that I've had the experience to work with in the last 30 years. I'll give you some examples of what senior leadership is doing here. One example is just in the form of a master's degree in electrical engineering that's so innovative that our national accrediting bodies couldn't figure out how to accredit the thing. Well, I think that's a mark of real innovation. It's the same electrical engineering degree, but the mode in which it's being delivered will make that degree accessible to people worldwide, and I think in a more cost-effective way. Our senior vice chancellor and CFO, Kelly Fox, through creative financing, all legal, but through creative financing, has figured out how to eliminate over $8 million in course and program fees starting this next fall. Now, as a parent of 2 recent college graduates, the certainty and the predictability of your tuition bill and your fee bill year over year is really important in planning for servicing the cost of a higher education. We have a remarkably creative Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs who's using best practices to promote a better student experience for all of our students here at CU Boulder. So innovation doesn't stop with senior leadership. We have arguably a very, very creative and productive faculty. Recently, among the top global science stories was attributable to the work of 2 of our faculty. Jinlang Zhao of mechanical engineering and Wei Zhang from chemistry and biochemistry, their work to create an electronic recyclable sensing skin. So this is a skin, a synthetic skin with sensors in it that promises to revolutionize the development of robotics and prosthetics. I think the really cool feature of this is it's fully recyclable, and that fits right into the ethos of CU Boulder, where we have actually the first zero-waste football stadium in the country. But since it's fully recyclable, it's not only more environmentally friendly, but it's more cost-effective in resynthesizing different kinds of electronic skin. We also have a very remarkably innovative and creative student body at all levels. As Bud mentioned earlier, we have this program called the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program, and it's revolutionizing the way our undergraduate students can interact with cutting-edge research with our senior faculty. Just one example is we have 3 undergraduates, Anastasia Muzinski, Dawson Beatty, and Andrew Pfeffer, who used a UROP grant to create a prototype for a reusable space module. What was really interesting is Anastasia had an affinity for origami. So she worked with this research team to use the principles of origami to design a prototype for a reusable and redeployable space module that really is quite remarkable. And for those prospective students out there, Anastasia is just a freshman. And if you want to read more about this remarkable story, just Google light bulb moment origami, and you can see the video of their amazing work. So innovation and creativity also exist with our staff. So a couple of years ago, our CFO provided an innovation research grant program for our staff, and she challenged the staff to come up with innovative ideas to improve the way they work and service the needs of our campus. So how many of you have been to Boulder and seen the iconic architecture and the tile roofs? Right, so those are beautiful, but they do take some work to maintain. And normally the way you would do it is you'd walk on top of these roofs, and first, it takes a lot of time, and second, it's not the safest thing to be doing is walking around on tile roofs. So the staff actually came up with this innovative program. Now it seems like a no-brainer, but at the time it was innovative. So what they proposed to us, and we funded this project, was that why don't we inspect our roofs using drones? And the neat thing about that, it makes the process of inspecting our roofs far safer for our staff, and we can inspect more roofs in a more time and cost-effective way. So innovation exists from top to bottom at CU Boulder. So we're reinventing ways to remove our traditional barriers to try to better meet the needs of the next 10 and 20 years. And we have a process ongoing at CU Boulder called the Academic Futures Project. So faculty, staff, and students have been invited to provide their input and ideas on what they think the university will look like in the next 10 and 20 years. We've received over 150 white papers from faculty, staff, and students, and they're coming up with some truly remarkable ideas. What the vision is for them to try to predict how we'll engage research, teaching, and scholarship in the next 10 and 20 years. And they're providing it with some remarkable ideas that should change the way students, faculty, and staff will engage our mission in the next 10 and 20 years. Implementing the Academic Futures recommendations, which you will be able to see publicly starting on September 1st and through the month of September, will take our best ideas and better enable us to service our strategic imperatives, which are to be an innovation university, to develop the leaders of tomorrow, and to positively impact humanity. It'll liberate faculty, staff, and students to really be creative and envision what the future would look like. And it'll better enable CU Boulder to service the needs of Colorado, Washington, D.C., and the world. So if you're a prospective undergraduate student, a faculty member, a prospective faculty member, an alumni, a donor, or someone who's just curious about what's going on at CU, here's my invitation to you. Please come to CU Boulder with your worst ideas. Those worst ideas could become the best ideas, and they may change the world. Thank you.